Welcome, everybody, to our latest webinar. It will actually be the last one for this year. So the latest news for this year. After that, we will do a little recap in December before then heading off next year with all the new important and funny stuff that we come across. But today we have a very special guest with us. Again, I have to say, if you're part of our webinars, you know him already. We have Jan Szczepanski with us from EFICode. He is going to lead us today he's going to talk to us about everything ALM that we need to know, whatever problem you have with your application lifecycle management, how we can move that to a version like Jira, how we can transform our systems, and what benefits we get from that. Hashtag breaking down silos. He's going to be our guy to talk to us today. So we're very happy to have him with us today. Hi, Jan. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
As always, I have Rina at my side, the CEO at Radby. She helps medtech and pharma companies leverage the Atlassian tools to achieve regulatory compliance and operational efficiencies. She's supported many regulated teams throughout their Agile transformation and as they adopt to DevOps practices. And quickly introducing Jan before I hand it off to him himself, he's the head of marketing at EFICode, Germany. He and his colleagues are specialized in serving enterprise customers in highly regulated industries, medtech, fintech, automotive, just to name a few. And as an Atlassian Platinum solution partner, they support IT and business teams in digitizing and optimizing business processes based on the Atlassian cloud platform. So I would say the two of them in a conversation together, match made in heaven. So yeah, as I promised, Jan, I want to hand it off to you, and I want to hand it off actually with a question. So I mentioned you have the background in test management for regulated industries. Can you maybe tell us maybe a bit more about your journey there? What's your background? How do you come to do what you do today?
Yeah, sure. So 15 years ago, I started as a project and process manager for one of the now leading payment service providers in Germany or across Europe. And 8 years ago, I started as a solution consultant for Atlassian products. Before that, again, different roles in project management, process management, and eventually co-founded Unicus, a cloud-first Atlassian solution partner, which is now EFICode Germany. Mentioned it. So especially in the last years of Atlassian's move to cloud, we started migrating customer from the financial industry to the Atlassian cloud. I personally specialize in implementing and optimizing business processes and solutions such as requirements engineering solutions, test management, risk management in the banking sector. So I've worked extensively with major German banks, helping them to transform their application lifecycle processes using the Atlassian tools and to integrate compliance requirements into their more and more agile workflows.
I imagine, given the banking industry, same problems as with the medical, very regulated, very highly based on rules. So what would you say, in your opinion, what are the main challenges you see in test management in those regulated industries? Maybe pick out like 5, because I'm probably thinking there's like a whole list of them.
Yeah, all 48. Okay, so what would be my top 5? I'm interested in what you out there think. What are your top 5? So maybe you can write that into the chat. But I think a primary challenge in test management is coordinating diverse teams, including developers, QA engineers, product managers, and external stakeholders. So poor communication or misalignment between these groups can result in delays, errors, and products that fail to meet customer needs. And that most of the time happens when you have like different tools, different environments. Managing test data and complex systems would be the second one. Data must retain relevance, current, secure, especially when dealing with sensitive information. And poor test data management can result in incomplete testing, leading to quality issues and increased risk of defects. Keeping pace with rapid development cycles. I just mentioned it a little bit before, but in modern Agile and DevOps environments, testing teams face challenges, keeping pace with fast development cycles. Managing test automation effectively while automation enhances testing efficiency, it brings its own challenges, including script maintenance, handling unreliable tests, and ensuring positive ROI on automation investments. And last but not least, the elephant in the room for today's webinar is obviously compliance and security. So modern software development must navigate complex compliance and security regulations.
Let's pick on that because you presented it so nicely on a plate. You mentioned it, the keyword compliance, security, regulations. You're obviously having the experience in the finance industry. So from your perspective, from your experience, what are the overall challenges and the requirements specific to that industry?
So I think when we talk about the financial institutes, we're dealing with a fascinating balancing act. On the one side, we have regulations, think BaFin, BIET, MARISC, and European directives, PSD2, GDPR, DORA. And these aren't just bureaucratic hurdles. They're like essential safeguards for our financial systems. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Banks need to do all of this while staying agile and competitive. And you also have to imagine that most of the banks still have this real monolithic software platforms out there with now more and more, like probably hundreds of thousands of microservices beside that. And so handling all of that could be really interesting. So in general, think of it as building a highway with a high-speed rail system. You want to go fast, but you need all the safety systems in place first. And that's exactly what we're doing in financial IT, enabling speed and innovation while maintaining security and compliance.
Yeah, security is especially if I think of like my bank account, right? I want it to be secure. I don't want anybody. At the same time, I want to have all the advances that come from the digital sphere and the digital possibilities that we have, right? You quickly also mentioned the BIET. I quickly want to get into that to also make sure everybody's on the same page there. Can you quickly explain what BIET is and what specifically is important from that concept for testing?
Okay, so BIET stands for the supervisory requirements for IT in financial institutions. And the main part that talks about testing is part 7, IT projects and application development. And there are like 6 major points you can pick out, which is like 2 we work heavily on. So the first one is IT projects must be managed according to defined model procedures, taking into account objectives, risks, resources, duration, and quality, and transition between project phases are tied to clear quality criteria. The next one is 7.6. Structured processes must be defined for an application development that govern requirements gathering, develop objectives, technical implementation, quality assurance, and testing and release in a risk-oriented manner. Then one of the real specific one we use nearly on a day-to-day basis is 7.7, where we talk about functional and non-functional requirements, and that they must be documented, evaluated, and approved. And acceptance and test criteria must be defined for each requirement. So, and this is where tools like Jira come in, right? So we do have our non-functional or functional requirements in the tool. And so where do you put your acceptance and test criteria? Is it in another tool? Is it in a test system where we work right now? And business units are responsible for this requirement definition, and the documentation may vary depending on the methodology. So is it a specification document? Is it a user story, whatever? Then we have 7.9, which talks about during the development, protection measures must be implemented according to security needs to ensure confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity of data. And so this includes input validation, access control, authentication, and logging. So it's really specific what you need to test. And then 7.11, which is again really specific of where we can place a Jira and X-Ray, for example, as a test management plugin, is a defined testing methodology must be applied before initial operations and after significant changes. So tests must cover functionality, protection methods, and if applicable, performance under various load scenarios. Tests are to be conducted by business units with testers having appropriate expertise and being independent from developers.
Thank you very much for going through all of that. I think it sets a great stage, but I also want to get Rena into the conversation now. And so my first idea was to ask you, like, does that sound familiar? But I've also seen you nodding a lot while Jan was talking. So I guess that is kind of like a silly question. So maybe let me rephrase that and say, like, what exactly resonates with you? What's your thought on what you just heard?
Yes, so a lot of that sounds very familiar, but let's say the main difference is what are you saving or what are you protecting? So in the case of the bank and the financial institute, of course, we are protecting monies. When we talk about pharma and medical technology, we are protecting lives. And I don't want to compare, but there are, of course, very similar controls there. Saskia, can you bring the presentation into the yes? So and when Jan talked about the controls, I could not avoid thinking about the V model, which keeps propping up every time that we are talking about developing controlled systems. These are, for example, the V model. This is the V model as we know it from the design controls from the FDA. FDA, of course, is the regulator in the United States that governs, in this case, medical technology, and that's their V model. There is also a V model that the pharma industry adopts for their systems that work in, for example, the production of our drugs. And it looks slightly different. And then there's the V model that Jan mentioned to me the other day, and this is this. And they all are pretty similar in concept in this way that they say, okay, you need to specify exactly what you want eventually the system to do. So this is the blue left side of the V model. Then you do the actual work. So the orange is always the actual work that needs to be done. And then the green are the controls that indeed whatever work you have done resulted in what you intended to have. So there is this notion of control. And together with the V model, when we look at it, we know it for ages. The V model has been there since ever, I think. And it was developed in a world of waterfall development. And we today do not want to do waterfall anymore. We want to do agile. But we are still abide by the V model, and hence the super big challenge of how do we actually square the circle, if you want. How do we manage to do all these controls, achieve all these controls while working in very close cycles? So in pharma, and I think this probably is also the case for financial institute, the normal cadence for releasing new versions for systems was once or twice a year. Today, that is not what people want. That's not what companies need. Everybody feels that in order for them to be competitive, they need to be releasing much more frequently. So if in a waterfall world, you could have done the planning in an isolated environment, hand off a finalized plan to someone else who would specify it more detail and then hand it over to the coders. And then after 6 months or so, you would land with the testers who would test it and so on. Today, the need for very close collaboration is so high because we basically want to be able to ship updates to the system every so often. And of course, so often varies, but in pharma today, very, very efficient companies are able to release once a week, maybe even once a day. So in order to achieve that and have this whole controls in place in such short cycles, that's one of the biggest motivations to move everything to one tool. Because imagine that if you have these siloed ALM systems that are separate from where the configuration and coding is done, just the handover between one system and another and one team and another takes so much time. So yes, that's basically all the background that Jan gave. Have risen the V model, yes, and together with the V model, of course, the traceability and all the reporting that needs to go into that. So when you think about how you do your configuration and coding, built into that, you need to take into account how you do the collaboration and how you do the reporting at the end, including all the traceability reporting that is notoriously complicated and expensive.
It like a term that always comes into my head when I hear you talk about that, and also when I heard Jan now talk about it. So if you have those very strict systems and trying to act in those strict systems in an agile way, it's very easy to fall into the waterfall scrum, right? Tell ourselves we're actually doing scrum, but what we're actually doing is basically more of the same, just quicker. And you also mentioned, Rina, quickly how shifting to one system that actually has it all could actually support that mission then to stay in the Scrum and to stay in the Agile field and not fall into a waterfall Scrum illusion. Maybe going back to Jan, can you talk a bit more about like why does it make sense to have all that together and to actually make the shift from legacy systems to, well, as we're all working in the Jira industry and the Jira field, to Jira in our case?
Yeah, so some of the things Rina just mentioned, obviously the elephant in the room is cost effectiveness. When we talk with customers nowadays, and they have specific tools in place, I would probably not name them, but we're probably all aware of the huge test management environments out there. They're really cost effective. And so that's one thing. The next thing is agile adoption. Jira is designed with agile methodologies in mind, making it a perfect choice for teams adopting Scrum or Kanban. And its features support iterative development and flexibility, which are essential in the agile environment. Integration capabilities. Jira has a really robust ecosystem of plugins or apps and integrations with various tools, including CI/CD tools, version control systems, and other software development tools. It's customizable and has a great scalability. So Jira allows for extensive customization of workflows, issue types, and fields. The adaptability makes it suitable for a wide range of projects and industries, from software development and marketing, which is, when you think about that, it's not just you have your software development team in Jira and your test management team in Jira. You can replace all your awesome Excel files for risk management, your ways of working in your mail toolbox in marketing and sales. So you have that on board as well. You have your whole product management on board. And so you can extend that to I don't know, all departments in the company actually. Then I think the interface is pretty user friendly. So Atlassian made a lot of changes, especially in cloud, to become more user friendly. Back then on server, it was like really packed and really technical, and people from business teams thought it would be hard to use that. And so Jira emphasizes more and more collaboration, makes it easier for teams to communicate and track process. Features like comments, mentions, notification, enhance team interactions, right? We have cloud-based options, which is also a great plus. A lot of companies, I don't know, Rina, you probably can talk about that as well. When you build a medical product, you focus on building a medical product. you're probably not the super IT guy who's able to set up a Jira data center somewhere, or like even larger IT infrastructures. And so, yeah, last thing, it really breaks down silos when you use one system, and it makes it easier for reporting. You have the whole traceability in one system from the idea to you release it, and I think this is very, very crucial.
I want to add one thing to your list, Jan, which is something I see in pharma a lot, and I think it actually probably impacts banking as well. There is a lot of outsourcing happening today. So very often development teams are not 100% employees of the organization. They are subcontractors. And people have found that Jira is so ubiquitous today that the software developer more or less expects to work in Jira when he is onboarding to a new project. And my customers just found that standardizing their development efforts on Jira makes it very easy to onboard and offboard development outsourced team. And they hence use this as the anchor and then bring along the satellite, if I can say it like that, which are the business teams and the testers.
There's actually a lot of ways you can do that. So you can bring in your externals in your Jira instance. So you have you're really flexible when it comes to the permission. They can work in Jira. You can link that to your project management, to your requirements engineering, to your test management without them seeing anything of it. So that's also like a huge benefit.
And I quickly want to bring in a point that we also talked about in our last webinar with Monica Andreas, where we talked about data integrity. And one point that she also very much put out and put forth is that the topic of data integrity can be very well handled with in Jira, which obviously in the fields that we're talking about, regulated fields, but that is a very important point. On the other hand, also what we see a lot, and maybe that's a question more directed towards Rina then. You mentioned cloud, yeah. You mentioned how the cloud integration of Jira is a great option for the companies. At the same time, if like I as a muggle think about that, cloud having everything online and everything being secure and well structured and all doesn't quite go together. So solve that that discrepancy for me, I want to say.
So Jan, you want to go or should I go? Do you prefer? Or...
You can start.
Yes. So it's all about risk management and understanding your exposure. So if you have a huge organization and a very, very skilled IT and security apparatus, maybe being on-prem is a good option for you. But most of the companies worldwide don't have it. Even large companies today, they don't necessarily have the up-to-date expertise in exactly managing the security periphery. So actually, in a way, outsourcing it to a trusted partner like Atlassian could be a very logical choice. You need to just get out of the mindset of not invented here. If it's invented here, can you guarantee that you are skilled enough and up to date enough and budgeted enough to protect your systems? I think that for most companies today, the answer is that Atlassian provides higher security. That's my opinion on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, we had a great speaker from a compliance and security company in our Atlassian community in Hamburg. So maybe we should do a webinar with him as well. So and he talks about, imagine every day at Atlassian, just Atlassian, and Atlassian is based on AWS. Just at Atlassian, there are like 300 people in the security team working on security and compliance. How many people do you have in your organization to manage software development security, testing security, IT security, and so on and so forth? And so that's just one part. The other part is like, people are afraid to put their data into the cloud. Okay, you could sign an agreement, okay? So there's a data processing addendum Atlassian will sign, so they will not process your data. Okay, fine. So check. But like, really, what about your IT systems? You don't get the best people on the market there, just all working for AWS, because they get like huge amount of money a month. And it's a really great job to work there. So it's really hard to get also the people into your company to manage your IT security. So obviously that's a huge topic, but in general, I think cloud options nowadays are really secure, and it's worth thinking about it to go to the cloud. Maybe you're not there right now, but it's important to start the conversation, to bring in someone who is experienced with that, went through all of the security and compliance stuff, and just start the journey, right? So we had like major German banks where we migrated the first issue after 16 months. So because we had to go through security compliance and stuff like that. So.
Well, I can say, Jan, it just reminded me, because you are talking about banks. There was time where we all kept our money in the shoe boxes under the bed.
Yeah.
But we don't, we no longer do that. So I prefer to have my money kept by my bank, and I somehow feel that it's more secure than keeping it in a shoebox under my bed.
Yeah. Although it's sometimes nice to find these old shoe boxes, and maybe you find a tenner somewhere, so that's great. But yeah, it's yeah.
Not how we agreed on managing things nowadays. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so imagine, oh no, not imagine. You've convinced me to go to the
Okay.
cloud movement, to join the movement and make my way towards the cloud. So working in a regulated industry like the banking or the medical industry, how do I do that? What's my next
Okay.
step?
Go and can you share the slide, Saskia? Okay. Okay, so we have, let's go and actually look at some real stuff, and we'll not let you go or finish the webinar today or proceed with the webinar without showing some real demos, real examples of how it can work in real life. So we talked about collaboration, we talked about the V model, sprint together with the V model. You basically need to bring into your sprint team at large also the business analyst that works on the requirements and the test people who work on the test management. So these are two big additions. So I think that a lot of Agile teams already have test management in-house. My strong recommendation would be to add the product manager or the business analyst capacity there as well, so that the grooming process would be involving already the grooming of requirements in a way that later on can contribute to the release documentation. So that's all done as well in short cycles. And in terms of tooling, I see Confluence as big part of the equation. So when you go into that direction of needing actually having documentation and release documentation in very short cycles, Confluence has a real power to aggregate and build reports out of Jira data. And you'll see here in the slide, we said Jira Plus and Confluence Plus, because as Jan already mentioned, Jira will need to be extended with apps and Confluence as well. So that's the plus. The plus stands for Jira and Confluence extended with apps from the marketplace. And what happens actually before the sprint, and in this slide, you can see just the flow of the sprint. Before the sprint, stories are groomed along with templates and preparations of the requirements and the release documentation. Then when the sprints happen, both the developers and the testers work in very close collaboration to ensure that whatever is delivered at the end of the sprint is tested, verified, and can be reported on. And then after the sprint, there is a short cycle of generating and preparing the documentation in Confluence so that the release can be released. It does not necessarily mean that you have to have a production release after each cycle, after each sprint. It just means that you can have it. And I will maybe jump directly into Confluence. 1 second, I'll change the screen. So how can it look like actually in Jira and Confluence? And I deliberately start from the end result, and the end result is the release documentation. Yes, we all do these extra requirements, V-model work, so that we at the end can have the proof that we did everything in a controlled way. And we have this Confluence setup here where basically all the different release documentations have their own pages and their own templates, and they are ready even before the release work starts or before the sprint work starts. But at the end of the release, they are automatically populated. And I'm showing here the traceability matrix. So this page includes a traceability with 3 levels: user requirements, functional specifications, and then tests and their test run results. This table is generated automatically from Confluence using a macro that is called snapshots. So this is one of the apps that we have added here to Confluence. And the advantage of snapshots is that it can take this data with its full hierarchy just based on configuration in Jira, so in Confluence. So you can configure this macro even before the release starts. You can then trigger the extraction of data once when the release is ended, and your page is ready basically to take through the approval cycle. Let us navigate from here directly to Jira and see what actually do we have in Jira. So the idea here is that all the V-model entities are living in Jira. They have their own world inside Jira where each item is managed with its own workflow. So this issue type, which is GAL7, is called user requirement. It was our choice when we built the V model for our project that the top level requirement of the V model will be called user requirements. And we just defined an issue type like that in Jira. It just, again, a flavor of how customizable and configurable Jira is. And then we are using the linked issues in Jira, which is a built-in feature in Jira. And we called links based on what is convenient for us. We call the traceability link just plainly traces down to. So the user requirement is tracing down into a functional specification. I will just navigate in Jira. This is now a functional specification. And this functional specification, you can see it has a whole lot of things happening around him. It's connected to other entities in the V model. It traces up to several user requirements, and it is tested by 4 different tests. It also mitigates risks. So we are not going too deep into risk management here in this webinar, but just that you will know that risks can be managed in Jira in this way. And all these links are used by snapshots in order to pull together the traceability into one easy report inside the Confluence. And once this report is finalized, so me as a business analyst for this project, I can see that all the requirements are covered with green tests. I can basically send it through the approval cycle here in Confluence and have it ready for the release. Another thing that is worth showing here is that our test efforts today, as Jan already mentioned, test efforts are happening in 2 principal ways. There is always a part that is manual, or almost always there is a part that is manual. I have not seen a team that has 0 manual tests. And then there is a part that is fully automated. And one of the advantages of working with Jira is that it has built-in API as well as the test management systems. For example, X-ray test management has an API that allows you to connect to your CI/CD cycle so that all your automated tests are then linked back or integrated back into Jira, and you can include those results into your traceability. So just to give an example here, in this specific report, focus on this column which brings in the tests. Some of the tests are generic, which is X-ray word for automatic, and some of them are manual. And here, from the point of view of this report, it's indicated what is manual and what is automatic, but the generation of the report and the way it looks like is exactly the same, because actually, from V-model point of view, both of them are tests. They are valid tests. They have proved the coverage of this requirement, and it satisfies what we need from a V-model standpoint. So that's basically it from demo perspective point of view. Saskia, you can move back to the.
Yeah, so I always love like snapshots, demos. Obviously, I'm biased here also, but no, I think it's a great tool generally if you look into regulated industries, as you mentioned, for the traceability, but obviously also for the release documentation, right? You have everything at hand with one click, which again, me, the muggle moving into this world, really like. But talking about like kind of my shopping list in Diagon Alley now. Maybe I can ask both of you quickly, because Rena, you talked about it. Jira and Confluence, just like out of the box, is great, but will probably not serve you as well as it could be. So yeah, Rena, you're already putting it up. Like, what's on my shopping list? What would both of you add to my shopping list?
Okay, so this is a shopping list that is a merge between me and Jan's shopping list on the right, but on the left there is the purpose. So I think it's more important to understand what are the areas that you will need to complete in order to achieve a full solution. So first, you'll need something to help you manage complex Jira hierarchies, because you will need to see the full traceability. And with Jira alone, it's a little bit hard to see exactly that you have full coverage for all your requirements. So I find it super useful to have an app that helps there. Then you'll need something for test management. I find that it's pretty indispensable to have extensions to JQL. So JQL is very rich. JQL is the way that you search in Jira. And the basic search is super powerful, but when you need to manage traceability, there are specific queries like you want to find orphan items, or you want to find items that are orphan from a specific link type, and it's impossible to achieve that just by JQL. So just the enhanced search is really an important thing, in my opinion. And then for Confluence, you have two areas. The area where you want to be able to do this aggregation of documents into release documents in Confluence. And if you want to actually approve the documents inside Confluence, which is not necessarily the case. Sometimes people just export PDF from Confluence and approve it in their old style legacy document management system. But if you want to approve the documents in Confluence, you have ways to do that, even ways that are GXP, FDR, CFR 21, Part 11 compliant, and you have choice there.
Absolutely, and I think it's also when we think about business teams coming from large Excel spreadsheets looking like templates, it's also a thing when you introduce structure or JXL or BigGunt, it really helps to showcase Jira or Confluence to your business teams, because it makes it more easy for them to work on those apps than maybe in Jira.
Absolutely.
Right? So like
Yes.
the initial touch point with a potential new solution like Jira is a very good one. And from a solution perspective, so you don't buy Jira just because you need a Jira, right? It's you need a Jira because of test management, because of risk management, and that always comes with an app. And it really enriches the way you work and communicate in your organization. So I really like the list of apps. Mm-hmm. Probably when we take more than 50 minutes, we can definitely find more apps. So,
and in terms of cost, by the way, even with these apps included, this solution competes very nicely with any legacy ALM tool.
So I can just maybe we still have time. I was at the Medica for 4 days, and we had a booth there talking about Jira and Confluence, and all the people were like, "Why Jira and Confluence on the Medica?" And with the solution from Softcomply you've mentioned here, and it's like it's all the other solutions that are out there are so expensive. That's amazing, and so yeah. It's really interesting.
So we're basically checking all your boxes that you mentioned earlier, like why move in the first place? You just mentioned the cost effectiveness, talked a lot about like how can we actually do an agile development here and not fall to waterfall scrum. How can we break down the silos? How can we have a more user-friendly interface? All of those different things that you mentioned. So yeah. Great list. I know where to start. And though I could obviously talk with both of you about that for hours, we are ending or nearing the end of our times. I don't want to end without asking one question. If given my metaphor of the muggles, so if you had the magic wand and you could create the ideal world, how would you wish all of your clients implemented all of what you just said?
I would wish for step by step. So I think what is really important. We just, I mean, the main topic today is test management, but it's also applicable for all the other things. Probably when you have a test management solution out there, it would be a good thing to understand where you are right now. What is the diagnosis, right? How does your current test management system works? What kind of terms you use right now? where you are. Showcase the new solution. Rina mentioned manual testing is still the case. Automated testing, how does the new application is actually capable of doing those things? Allow people to experience the solution. I think it's very important to have a demo environment somewhere. Find champions in your organization that are willing to use a certain amount of time to do like double the work. So you still work in a Jira environment, for example, and then you have another Jira environment where you have your test management system running. And then I think it's really important, as I mentioned, start where you are, constant communication about the process and how the new solution could look like, bring in the people who are really interested and could be a multiplicator for this project. Don't do a big bang. Always do a phased approach. Yeah, it's a piece of a larger DevSecOps framework in the end. So I think that's also a crucial point to focus on.
What I've seen, one crucial ingredient here is to be really willing as an organization to take risks. So these are new stuff. It's not the same as doing the things. It's not the same as doing the things in the same way that we have always done. Yes. And people, especially companies who need to pass audits, sometimes they are so risk averse that any change, any modification of the way of working will frighten someone there. They will say, no, but we will get an audit finding or whatever. So this never works. You cannot do these things without willing to take an innovative approach, a fresh new way of thinking, really take a risk-based approach to compliance. So in pharma and in medical device, this is a big buzzword. Everybody wants to take a risk-based approach, but then when you poke them, you discover that risk means zero risk and everything needs to be compliant exactly in the same way. Yes. So if you have this as a mindset, you'll never do this solution. You'll never adopt it because it will turn out to be so costly, so prolongated. You'll never see the value. But if you take step by step and you are courageous and are willing to have a fresh ways of working, you will succeed. And I tell you, you will pass audits. Yes, my customers have passed audits with flying flags. Yes, but not by doing the things old school.
Yeah, and I think that is a very important point. Like things change, right? And things are able to change. So are you going with it, or are you deciding to stay in your own in the field you're comfortable in now?
Exactly.
Because you're fearing to step out a little toe. Yeah. Wow. This has been really like a great summary of everything that's important to know, to think about. Obviously, the work is not done with a conversation like this, but at least I think it's a great start to also maybe encourage some people to actually go out there and take that risk. Calculated risk. Calculated risk, I think, is the key word there. Yeah.
And start the communication. Just start the communication and take it from there, really. Yeah.
I'll leave that as a last sentence. We'll categorize that under famous last words.
Okay.
Rina, Jan, thank you both for sharing all that you shared. It's been a wonderful time. I am equipped, I would say. I have a to-do list and a shopping list, so that's great. I think, as far as I can speak for you, Jan, people are heavily invited to reach out to you if they still have questions. They're obviously
Absolutely.
always invited to reach out to us. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, then Jan is obviously only a click away in the description of the of the text. If you're watching us on YouTube, hang on for a second. We will give his contact details once we say our goodbyes. Which I will do now, again, with a very big thank you to you, Rena, to you, Jan, and to all of you for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye.